Oh, hello, and welcome to another Today's Decay, where we celebrate births and beginnings of everything important since the dawn of time. It is November 24th, and here are all the dates that were they right. 1859 on this day, Charles Darwin's Origin of Species was first published. Big fan of science. Not such a fan of superstition. Also a big fan of science fiction, though. And on today's date, 1916, one Forrest J. Ackerman was born. He was a teetotaler, but I still thought I'd have a drink for him today. He was my buddy. Sci-fi was his high, not drugs and alcohol, as he would say. He coined the term sci-fi. He was right there at the beginning of fandom, which is to say science fiction and horror, speculative fiction. And at the time, we're talking like, well, he first got bit by the bug in like 1924. What year did One Glorious Day come out? I know for him, he would describe it as one glorious night. When the last of the big time angels, his grandparents brought him to go see One Glorious Day, which was a like supernatural comedy starring Will Rogers and Lil Eck the Ghoul, who was like a probably if the movie was around today, we'd probably view it as like this is what Casper was based off of, probably. Yeah, but that's just the very beginning. It's actually a story that takes up the majority of the 20th century. But he would say that of his beginnings, it was a proud and lonely thing to be a fan. That's because there was nobody else that he could talk to about what he really enjoyed, which were the stories of H.G. Wells and Jules Verne and Bram Stoker and Mary Shelley. And the way that people communicated about being into the strange and unusual at a time well before the internet was in the letter page columns in the back of pulp magazines. So you had weird tales and astounding wonder stories and amazing stories and maybe Ghost Stories magazine. Not sure if that had a letters column in the back or not, but people from all over the world could then like communicate with each other over like several months' time, and that was how you I won't say networked, because the idea wasn't networking. It was just there was nobody to talk to where you live about what is your passion. And whether your passion is science fiction or some sort of music, rock and roll type stuff, I think that there's a lot that we can all identify with. I know growing up and getting into first punk and then psychobilly, there was nobody to talk to about psychobilly, and it was kind of just a random thing that I even got into it in like the mid 90s. But then eventually, I actually, this totally connects. Haha! In the back of Maximum Rock and Roll, I put an ad for a mixtape of psychobilly stuff that I was selling for like $1, so which just basically covered postage. And then I wound up getting pen pals because people said yes, I'd like the cassette tape of psychobilly stuff I was able to get. And then I wound up making pen pals, and eventually met people from like Germany and Austria and England, and even a couple of people between Boston and Baltimore. There was like 5 people between Boston and Baltimore. That's not true, maybe 10. But still, we all wound up knowing each other, and it was a very small world. And as I heard Forey Ackerman's story, I felt like, well, that's me. But not just me, because I'm trying to make this somewhat quick. The guy lived into his 90s, so there's a lot to talk about. But in the 50s, he, in the 50s, am I going to do that? No. He's the person that came up with cosplay in 1939. We're not going to go to the 50s yet. He showed up to the 1939 World's Fair because there was this whole big Futurama section of the 39 World's Fair. And it was timed around the first World Science Fiction Convention here in New York City. So he walked the streets of New York dressed as the Raymond Massey, The Shape of Things to Come futuristic costume that him and his girlfriend at the time, what was her name? She went by one name. They also embraced Esperanto. I'm forgetting her name. It wasn't like Tigra, but it was something like that. Oh, I'm going to remember it later. It's going to bother me. But yeah, they believed in Esperanto as like one language should take over for everything else, and all in a pre-World War II viewpoint, there was still some thought that like we could reach some utopian future in like the next 100 years or so. Didn't get there, not realistic. World War II, I think, kind of cemented anybody's thoughts into like which way is humanity going, positively or negatively. You know, can we lift ourselves up or not? But in a pre-World War II world, there was still a decent amount of people out there who were hopeful. So, it's going to really bother me what her name was. She was also like a really early mover and shaker involved with early science fiction fandom. And she like remade herself. Like, forget it. I don't know. Sometimes I just kind of babble without thinking where I'm going exactly. But he eventually starts Famous Monsters magazine in the late 50s, which brings Halloween to the newsstands for kids across the world every month for about 25 years, I'd say, approximately, until he leaves. And this was because he had amassed an enormous collection of monster movie memorabilia, film stills, books, posters, props, you name it. He had like a museum in his house that he would give free guided tours every Saturday from the early 50s onwards, like up until literally the year he died. But he used a lot of these stills and his memories of seeing these films and put it all into this magazine. And it was a way that kids could find out about stuff that otherwise wasn't available on television or having re-releases in the movies yet. That didn't really happen for another 10 plus years. And most importantly, he really championed kids exploring and using their imagination and coming up with their own ideas and coming up with their own ways of like building monster makeup and special effects and just creating. And in the process, you get people like Steven Spielberg, George Lucas, Stephen King, Joe Dante, all who were like 10-year-olds reading this magazine being like, huh, Flash Gordon, you don't say. I'd like to check that out. Well, I got some ideas of my own for this. And what else? He eventually creates Vampirella. He's a huge champion of equal rights, gay rights, all at a time which this could get you in a lot of trouble. And it's those people that really stand up for the downtrodden, which I think is very inspiring. I think it's very easy to like follow the masses, and it's great that we are in a morally better place today than we were years ago, but still, humanity is sheep, or so I think. And so, all the more inspirational when you see somebody stand up for what they know to be right at a time where that's not what the horde is doing, you know? Yeah. What else? He would give you his shirt off his back. He's a great guy. Yeah. What else? Plenty more. Oh, we created Vampirella. He didn't really give her the shirt off his back. She's not really wearing a shirt. But still, great stuff regardless. Maybe it's despite of. What else? Anyway, Forrest J. Ackerman. Should remember him every day. My house, my world. Matter of fact, these videos are very much all an inspiration of him. I'm inviting you into my house, not physically, but by way of these videos every day, in part because I knocked on Forey's door one day feeling like I don't know that he's gonna, bother to open the door, or what if he's in a bad mood. You never want to meet your idols, right? That's the term. In this case, no, definitely wrong. He was wonderful. And like, we'd go out for lunch all the time, and he was hard of hearing by the time I got to him, and we were still able to go back and forth with all these ridiculous puns. It was really good. It was really good. So what else? Freddie Fingers Lee, born today, 1937, the one-eyed boogie boy himself. England's answer to Jerry Lee Lewis, I guess. Weird that the Teddy Boys have like 50s rock and roll performers, but like a Funhouse mirror version of their own, Doesn't matter. Freddie Fingers Lee is fantastic. Yeah, absurd. Never got to see him. Quite unfortunate. The film The Innocents premiered today, 1961, starring Deborah Carr. That recently came out as a television show. I forget what the name of it was. I guess it wasn't bad, but it just kept going, and it really didn't need to. The Innocents does it perfectly well on its own. Just see this movie. Early 60s, supernatural horror film, kind of doing the best. That's like the high point. I think like 50s and 60s in a post-Val Lewton world. Be it The Haunting, The Innocents, Burn Witch Burn, Curse the Demon. This is like the scariest movies out there. Maybe The Sentinel. You've got some 70s ones that are really phenomenal too, but 50s and 60s, fantastic. The D.B. Cooper hijacking incident occurred today, 1971, if you believe that. I don't know. I feel like this is like one of those like get-rich-quick schemes that people just dream. If only it was me. I don't know. Whatever. Interesting anyway, I suppose. And today, in 1978, started a whole new era for like about a 2-year span. Bobby Steele first tried out for the Misfits today, 1978. My favorite era of the Misfits, the Bobby Steele era. Yeah. So there you go. That's the whole day. All exciting stuff. Maybe crack open a book. Something Forey Ackerman may have written or collected. He was a huge supporter of everybody he believed in, really. And we could use more of those in this world. Anyway, that's it. Till tomorrow. Good night.